Tilbury Power Station in Essex, outside London. It produces 1,000 megawatts of electricity a year, a fifth of London's household energy needs. "30% of London's power comes from coal, 30% from gas, 20% from nuclear, the rest from other sources. But coal is the big polluter. New UK emission standards will make coal-fired power stations like this obsolete by 2015.
One of the things that we do have to be very careful about is that we meet the various national and international obligations that we've signed up to. And that means that we have to be concerned about a variety of pollutants that come out of our power stations.
London now produces 50 million tonnes of CO2 every year, which is almost 25% more than 5 years ago.
Climate change is a massive challenge for cities because we're such big producers of greenhouse gas emissions. And for instance, London consumes as much energy as Portugal or Greece as a country. So it's a very big challenge for us. And cities generally consume about 75, 3/4 or more of the world's energy.
Renewables like wind power or solar account for only 5% of the city's power production. However, plans are in the pipeline for a new $3 billion wind power project called the London Array.
One of the major opportunities for London is the Thames Estuary offshore wind project, which is going to produce about 1/4 of London's home electricity.
Though permission for the wind farm's land-based substation has been turned down, London's authorities remain hopeful it'll be fully operational by 2011, just before the Olympics. But according to a report by the Royal Academy of Engineering, the cost of producing offshore wind power is twice that of both gas and nuclear. Another option is to cut demand through energy efficiency, but some experts are not sure this will work in practice.
For many of us, on reasonable levels of income, energy really isn't at the moment very expensive. And so we don't have a very strong inducement to think really carefully about our energy use.
Beijing is home to over 15 million people, more than double the population of London. The city is hungry for energy and getting hungrier. China uses and produces more coal than any other country in the world, and is set to overtake the US as the world's biggest emitter of greenhouse gases within the next decade. To cope with growing demand for electricity, the authorities are building a new coal-fired power station every 10 days. Coal currently provides 2/3 of China's energy.
More than half of Beijing's energy comes from coal. It's not sustainable. We can't continue like this.
Last year alone, China added the same amount of generating capacity as there is in the entire United Kingdom. Beijing is solving its pollution problem by following in London's footsteps.
For example, many big industries which consumed large amounts of energy have moved out of Beijing, just like London experienced in the past. Steel and chemical companies are planning to move out of the capital. In the domestic energy sector, we've introduced many energy-saving measures. Such as residential buildings, we have the requirement that they must have an energy-efficient design. New residential buildings will save 60% more energy than the old buildings. Public buildings will save 50% more than the old ones.
Despite being 3 times the price, natural gas is becoming increasingly important for Beijing. That leaves cars as the main source of air pollution. According to Beijing's municipal authorities, they emit 3,600 tons of pollutants every day.
a couple of years ago, top polluters for the air pollution is energy use because we are a big city for burning coal. But now burning coal mostly replaced by natural gas. So actually car use is on the top priority to prevent the air pollution.
London is also struggling to keep down airborne pollution levels. Transport of one kind or another puts over 9 million tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year, accounting for a fifth of London's greenhouse gas emissions.
Transport is a huge issue in London because so much of the traffic is actually in gridlock. Enormous quantities of fossil fuels are burned by cars standing stationary.
In 2003, the Greater London Authority, the GLA, introduced the congestion charge, where cars pay almost $15 to enter central London.
There was a 30% drop in the number of cars entering the zone. There was a very big drop in traffic as well. They transferred to the buses. They also transferred to their bikes, and more people started walking.
Londoners make 26 million journeys a day, 500,000 of those by bike, less than 2%. According to Transport for London, cycling has risen 72% since 2000. This is Critical Mass. It's a monthly gathering of up to 1,000 cyclists in central London, coming together informally to promote cycling around the city.
Hey! It's a bit of a mixed bag, really. Sort of anything from anarchists on bicycles to people trying to protest about the environment and the overuse of cars.
Well, we need more cycling lanes, basically, and less cars, less big cars. Because most people I know who ride bicycles are a bit scared to ride bikes because of cars and mad car driving on the roads.
It's dangerous because some of the drivers don't really know how to drive.
In Beijing, cyclists are saying exactly the same thing as in London.
Nowadays, it's not very convenient to ride a bike. Cycle lanes are getting narrower and narrower, whilst car lanes are becoming wider and wider, but there's still traffic jams.
Some of the data is not discouraging. We still have 31% of people using bicycles, 28% are using public transport, and 29% are using cars, which does concern us.
但是其中我们最感的忧虑的是，有29%的人在用的小汽车。
Beijing's roads were once dominated by bicycles, but the car is now king. The number of cars on the road has doubled in the last 5 years and is now growing even faster. Over 1,000 new cars a day are currently hitting the streets of China's capital. But there's a sting in the tail for Beijingers.
We encourage people to buy a car to support the GDP development, but we do not encourage people to use the car because we don't have no more space to park the car within the city center.
毫无疑问，解决这个问题的措施，这可能
Undoubtedly, the only way to solve the problem is to develop public transport, to encourage people to reduce car use.
但是这里面有个前提，就是我们必须。 We
must develop public transport in the way that London and many other big cities have done. We must ensure that once people have given up their cars, they can get about conveniently using bicycles or railways or buses. If not, people will go back to their cars.
Beijing has made much of their games being the Green Olympics in 2008. But time is running out, and air pollution and traffic jams are getting worse. One solution being considered is a temporary ban on private cars during the Olympics. We've seen how both cities have moved out their polluting power stations and are now trying to deal with their car emissions. According to the GLA, A fifth of all London's emissions comes from bringing food into town. Trucks, ships, and 888 freight flights a day bring food from all over the world. This is New Spitalfields. It's the largest fruit and vegetable market in London. London consumes roughly 7 million tonnes of food every year, of which 81% is imported from outside the UK.
American red apples, Australian produce, there's no end to the amount of stuff that comes in from literally all over the world.
2 gem, 1 cress. And a round lettuce. Now they're making a hue and cry about the environmental situation, and it's just unfortunately part and parcel of this business and any other business.
The giants of the food sector are the supermarkets, which account for 73% of all food sold in London, with produce from all over the world. By contrast, nearly all the food in Beijing, 70%, is locally produced. This is Xinfadi, Beijing's largest food market. It's 3 kilometers long.
The imported fruits are too pricey. These are much more affordable for the majority of people.
Although Beijing has twice as many people as London, they consume slightly less food, 6.35 million tonnes per year. A third of this is grown around Beijing itself.
We've got pears from Hebei province and apples from Shaanxi and Shandong provinces.
As Beijingers grow in wealth, lifestyles and diets improve. In the past 5 years, their food bill has gone up by almost $1 billion.
For example, I already have a bigger belly, probably because my diet has changed from vegetables to meat, and so my own belly is getting bigger and bigger. Now I understand why Westerners are stronger than us Chinese, because they have more meat in their diet.
The city, too, is getting fatter. For 5 years, it's been growing at 10% per annum. Beijing may be well fed, but it's getting thirsty, in part from a severe lack of rainfall.
Here in ancient times, Beijing has been flooded almost every year. But unfortunately, because of the fast-paced development of the city, the water has been dried away. And it's almost everywhere in the city, and it's all like that.
A massive diversion project is now underway, carrying water 1,600 kilometers from the Yangtze and other rivers in the south of China. At $40 billion, it's double the cost of the massive Three Gorges Dam.
In Beijing, the largest proportion of water consumed is not from the domestic sector, it's from the industrial, agricultural and other production sectors. So through the adjustment of the industrial structure, we're moving the big industrial water consumers out of the city. So the water cost is now much lower. In recent years, through those adjustments, we've saved more than 2/3 of the water used by industry compared to before. So saving water is a key issue to solve the water shortage problem.
Although Beijing has serious water problems, households have meters. Beijingers pay for their water, which discourages waste, unlike in London, where meters are still optional. So Londoners have no incentive to save water. % of London's water comes from the River Thames, is stored in reservoirs and then treated. But as in Beijing, water is becoming more scarce each year.
Already there is a gap between available water and the demand for it, and with London growing, that gap will grow wider unless we do both reduce leakage and install meters in every home.
The major problem is that London's water system was designed and built 150 years ago. As a result, London has a massive problem with leakages, and it's getting worse. The amount of water lost has gone up by 30% in the last 5 years. London's water provider, Thames Water, have been set targets to replace ancient broken pipes.
They've been failing the targets that we as the regulator set to control their leakage to an economic level, and they failed for 3 years running, and they weren't much better before that.
Thames Water defends its record and blames the problem on London's ancient system.
Leakage in London is unacceptably high. When you have 10,000 miles of pipes under London, under every street in London, there are water pipes. You just can't see them. It takes a long time to get round and replace that.
They're still losing nearly 900 million litres a day of treated water on its way to supply, and that can't go on.
Waste is currently a major obstacle to London's hopes of becoming a sustainable city. Londoners produce about 17 million tonnes of waste per year. Of that, 17.7% is recycled, double the amount from 5 years ago. But London is still a long way behind its European neighbours. The Germans recycle half their waste, the Dutch 2/3. 73% of London's waste goes to landfill sites. But the amount of landfill space is running out. The city authorities have set a target to recycle 35% of all waste by 2015. But people are not yet obliged by law to recycle.
There's no real impetus at the moment for the householder to recycle, apart from being a good thing to do.
The 3 million tonnes of waste that is recycled in London every year is brought into sorting centres and separated out. Some of it's then burnt in giant incinerators to generate power, which is put back into the national grid. But waste experts say London stands no chance of meeting its targets by 2015 unless more facilities like this are available for local councils to work with.
There's not a great deal that local authorities can't collect as long as they've got somewhere to take it. The creation of this new infrastructure may need up to and including £2 billion for London alone.
After being recycled, London's waste paper is sold on to different countries around the world, including China. By contrast, China has a tradition of recycling that's for many both a way of life and a business opportunity. These people are Beijing's recycling collectors. They scour the city, hoping to find rubbish that can be sold to scrap dealers and then recycled. Throughout Beijing, there are over 120,000 people recycling rubbish, mostly from poor regions outside Beijing. They earn up to $5 a day.
People think those collectors are at the very bottom of society, that they are lower than us. In fact, they are giving us, society, the whole city, a lot. They should have our respect.
Rubber is taken to Dingzhou City, glass goes to Handan City. Each year, they'll transport around 2 million tons of waste.
The recyclers move over 2 million tons of waste a year. Beijing recycles 30%, half as much again as London. The rest either goes to landfill or is incinerated. What they can't sell, the recyclers bring to 821 waste collection points dotted all over Beijing. Here, waste is compressed, and shipped out to landfill sites. But some experts want to approach the problem from a different direction.
Why not work on producing less rubbish? For example, reducing packaging, trying to obtain materials from nearby so they take a shorter journey, reusing and second-hand trade. These are all possible ways to reduce the amount of rubbish, so we hope in the near future rubbish will decrease. It's a shame because at the moment rubbish is increasing.
In recent years, many people have been able to afford a better lifestyle, and that creates a very challenging problem for us. The amount of overall waste and also household rubbish is increasing. Many of our landfill sites are full, and we need to find new ones. China is still a developing country. Both recycling and reducing waste are a good direction for the future. It's a difficult task. We'll keep working hard on it.
Both Beijing and London won bids to host Green Olympics, but both cities are a long way off meeting their targets. Both still rely heavily on fossil fuels for energy. London's improved its transport problems with less cars on the road, but Beijing is squeezing more and more cars onto already crowded roads. On the other hand, Beijingers still buy most of their food locally, whilst Londoners' meals come from across the world. London recycles just 20% of its waste, whereas Beijing recycles 30%. London still wastes a third of its water, whilst Beijing is having to bring it in from the south to avoid a major crisis. While both cities have made some improvements, so far the ambitious targets set for sustainability are not met. But there's still time. In Dickens' famous words, will it be the best of times, or will it be the worst of times?